The galactic Concord chamber hung in silent orbit above the planet Vera, a jewel of diplomacy built over centuries. Its curved walls shimmered with soft light, and the air hummed with the low buzz of translation fields and data streams. Hundreds of alien delegates filled the tiered seats, tall, spindly beings with iridescent skin, armored reptilian figures with flickering eye stalks, floating jelly-like entities suspended in nutrient globes. For generations, this place had stood as proof that peace was possible, even among wildly different species. But today, that peace was breaking apart. Panic rippled through the chamber like a shockwave. Voices rose in a dozen languages, overlapping, shouting, accusing. Holographic displays flickered and died. One moment, a three-eyed delegate from the Qatari Dominion was demanding answers. The next, his image dissolved into static. Translation units sputtered, spitting out garbled phrases that made no sense. A mere ambassador slammed 6 of her limbs against her console in frustration, her chitinous shell clicking loudly. At the center of it all, Earth's seat sat empty. It had been empty for hours. The blue and white sigil above it, the simple circle with a green leaf inside, flickered weakly, then went dark. No one from Earth had shown up for the emergency session. No message. No explanation. Just silence. Then, without warning, the massive screen that arched over the entire chamber lit up. In clean, bold letters written in standard galactic script, it read, "Independence confirmed. No signature. No date, no list of demands. Just those 2 words, cold and final." A stunned hush fell for half a second, then exploded into chaos. The Qatari delegate leapt to his feet, his scaled tail lashing. "This is betrayal!" he roared, his voice amplified by his translator. Earth was bound by the Concord Accords. They cannot just walk away. Nearby, a Voss envoy, a massive, slow-moving being made of swirling gas contained in a transparent suit, let out a low, rumbling sigh that sounded like distant thunder. "They did not walk," the Voss said calmly. "They vanished." Outside the chamber's panoramic windows, space told the real story. Where Earth's diplomatic shuttles and supply vessels once floated in neat formation, something else was happening. Human warships, sleek, angular, and far more advanced than anyone remembered, were detaching from hidden docks near Vera's orbital ring. They moved in perfect unison, engines glowing a soft blue as they powered up. No wasted motion. No hesitation. Just order. At the front of the fleet, the command vessel Aegis Dawn hung like a blade unsheathed. On its bridge, Captain Daniel Shaw stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the Concord chamber shrink on the view screen. His face was calm, but his eyes held the weight of years of quiet planning. "Final systems check," he said, his voice low but steady. "All green, sir," replied Lieutenant Ryan Cole from the helm. "Gravitic shields at full. Slipspace drive primed. Fleet sync is holding." Shaw nodded. "Good. Then we're done here." Back inside the chamber, the panic deepened. A junior aide from the insectoid Mir delegation scurried toward the empty Earth seat, hoping to find a data chip, a note, anything. But the console was dark, locked down. She tapped it once, twice, nothing. Around her, arguments turned into threats. The Qatari accused the Mir of helping Earth escape. The Mir hissed back that the Qatari had been bullying Earth for years. Old grudges, long buried under layers of diplomacy, burst open like wounds. On the observation deck above the main floor, Lisa Morgan, Earth's last official diplomat to the Concord, stood hidden behind a privacy screen. She hadn't entered the chamber. She didn't need to. She already knew what would happen. Her job was finished the moment the message went live. She watched as the human fleet began to move. One by one, the ships aligned, their formation tightening like a fist. Then, with a flash of light that bent space itself, the Aegis Dawn vanished into slipspace. The rest followed, disappearing in rapid succession until only empty space remained. Lisa exhaled slowly. She felt no fear, only relief. For decades, Earth had played the quiet student, nodding politely while the Concord dictated terms. Humans built ships they weren't allowed to command. They mined asteroids they couldn't claim. They fought wars they didn't start, all while being told they were not ready for true equality. But Earth had been ready for a long time. While the galaxy slept, humanity had worked in secret. Deep in the asteroid belt, in shielded labs beneath Mars, in orbital factories hidden behind Jupiter's moons. They had built something new. Not just weapons, but systems, networks, defenses. They had waited, not out of weakness, but out of patience, and now they were done waiting. Below, the chamber descended into near riot. Security drones buzzed overhead, trying to restore order. But even they seemed confused. The conquered central AI, usually calm and efficient, kept repeating, "Diplomatic anomaly detected. Please remain calm." But no one was listening. Lisa turned away from the window. Her shuttle waited on the far side of the station. She had 1 hour to leave before the Concord locked down all departures. She didn't run. She walked calmly, her boots clicking against the polished floor. As she passed a group of arguing delegates, a Qatari guard stepped in front of her. "Human," he growled. "You will explain what your government has done." Lisa looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "We've done nothing," she said simply. "We've just stopped doing what you told us to." She stepped around him and kept walking. Outside, space was no longer quiet. From the far edges of the system, distress signals began to flash. A mere trade convoy reported being fired upon by Qatari patrols. A Voss listening post went silent. On 3 different colony worlds, human-descended populations rose up, tearing down conquered banners and raising Earth's old national flags. The fragile web of alliances that held the galaxy together was snapping, thread by thread, and at the center of it all, Earth was gone. Not destroyed, not defeated, just independent. Captain Shaw's voice echoed softly over the private channel shared by Earth's fleet commanders. "Remember why we're doing this. Not for revenge, not for power, for the right to choose our own path." The Aegis Dawn reappeared near the edge of the Sol system, where the sun's light was just a pale glimmer. Behind it, hundreds of ships formed up, ready to defend what they had reclaimed. Back on Vera, the Galactic Concord chamber burned with noise and fear. But in the silence of deep space, something new was being born. Humanity was no longer asking for a seat at the table. They were building their own. For years, Earth had played the quiet role. In the eyes of the Galactic Concord, humanity was useful but not equal. Humans built ships but weren't allowed to command them in deep space operations. They grew food on Mars and Titan, but had to sell most of it to the Conquered at fixed prices. They sent soldiers to fight in border wars they didn't understand, wearing uniforms that bore no national symbol, only the Concord's. Silver Ring, Lisa Morgan had spent 12 years as Earth's senior diplomat on Vera. She'd sat through endless meetings where alien delegates spoke over her, corrected her grammar and standard script, or simply ignored her proposals. Once, a Qatari minister had patted her on the head like she was a child and said, "You'll understand galactic politics when you're older, little human." She'd smiled politely. Inside she'd burned, but Earth never protested loudly, never threatened, never demanded more than a whisper of fairness. The Concord mistook that silence for weakness. They were wrong. While diplomats like Lisa played their careful games, others worked in the dark. Beyond Neptune, hidden in the shadow of a dead moon named Proteus, floated Shipyard Gamma 9. To outside scans, it looked like a junkyard, old freighters, broken satellites and mining drones left to rust. But inside its hollowed-out core, thousands of engineers, programmers, and builders worked in shifts around the clock. Marcus Boone stood on the main gantry, arms crossed, watching as a new warship took shape. It was sleek, black and bristling with weapon ports that hadn't existed in any Concord database. Its hull shimmered faintly, coated in experimental gravitic shielding that could bend light and energy alike. "Neural sync test in 10 minutes. A voice called from below. Marcus nodded. He wasn't a soldier. He was a builder. But he'd seen what happened when Earth asked nicely for better medical supplies during the Titan plague. The Concord had delayed shipments for months, citing budget reviews. Over 2,000 people died waiting. After that, he stopped believing in nice. He walked down to the control deck, where young engineers monitored holographic schematics. One of them, a woman with grease on her cheek and tired eyes, looked up. "Sir, the drone swarm for Luna's defense grid is online. All 10,000 units." "Good," Marcus said. "Make sure they're set to passive mode." "We don't want accidents." "No, sir." "But what if they come?" "They won't. Marcus said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. Not yet. Back on Earth, in a secure bunker beneath the Rocky Mountains, Colonel Elena Ruiz studied star maps on a wall-sized display. Her uniform was plain, no medals, no rank pins. Just a dark green jacket and boots worn from years of fieldwork. Around her, officers moved quietly, coordinating evacuations. Mars, Ceres, Europa, Ganymede. All had human settlements, some with thousands of people. And all were now at risk. The moment Earth declared independence, those colonies became targets. The conquered wouldn't let them go without a fight. Mars evacuation is at 92%, an aide reported. Last shuttle launches in 3 hours. Elena nodded. Any resistance from the local conquered garrison? None yet. They seem confused. She almost smiled. Confused was good. Confused meant they weren't shooting, but she knew it wouldn't last. On the screen, a red dot blinked near Jupiter. A Qatari patrol had changed course, heading toward Ganymede. Elena tapped a command. A hidden satellite near Io activated, sending a silent pulse. Seconds later, the Qatari ship veered off as if it had received new orders. It hadn't. The pulse had just scrambled its navigation long enough to buy time. Earth hadn't just built ships and shields. It had built eyes and ears everywhere, tiny, smart, and invisible. For years, while the Concord bragged about their surveillance network, humanity had been planting its own seeds in the dark. Lisa Morgan arrived back on Earth 2 days after the declaration. Her shuttle landed at a quiet airfield in Colorado, far from cities. No fanfare, no reporters. Just a black van waiting. She was driven to the same bunker where Elena worked. When she walked into the command center, Elena looked up and gave a small nod. "You made it." "Barely," Lisa said. "The Conquered tried to detain me at the station. I told them I was carrying a contagious fungus. They let me go fast," Elena chuckled. "Good thinking." Lisa walked over to the star map. "What's our status?" "Safe for now," Elena said. "All off-world civilians are either home or in secure transit. Military assets are hidden or en route to defensive positions. The fleet is holding at the edge of the system, waiting. Waiting for what? For them to make the first move," Lisa sighed. "They will. Pride won't let them do nothing." She was right. 3 days later, the Qatari High Command issued an ultimatum. Earth must return to the Conquered, surrender its new weapons, and accept a permanent oversight council. If not, they would restore order by force. Earth's reply was simple: no. The next morning, the Qatari fleet jumped into the Sol system near Luna. They expected an easy victory. Luna was lightly defended, or so the Concord record said. They sent 3 heavy cruisers and a dozen support vessels, confident they could seize the moon in hours. What they didn't know was that Luna's light defenses were a lie. Beneath the moon's surface, in tunnels built during the old Earth-Mars Cold War, waited the lunar shield, a network of quantum-linked turrets, drone launchers, and sensor arrays. All of it had been upgraded in secret over the last 5 years. All of it was now awake. The moment the Qatari ships crossed the defense perimeter, the moon lit up. Beams of blue-white energy lanced out from craters that had looked empty for centuries. Swarms of tiny drones, no bigger than birds, flooded the space around the enemy vessels, jamming comms, blinding sensors, and latching onto hulls to deliver micro-explosives. One Qatari cruiser vanished in a flash as its reactor overloaded. Another spun wildly, its engines dead. The third tried to retreat, but a hidden railgun on the far side of the moon fired a tungsten slug at near light speed. The ship broke apart before it could jump away. The entire battle lasted less than 7 minutes. On Earth, people watched the feed in silence. No cheers, no celebration. Just relief, and a cold understanding. Humanity was no longer prey. Back in the bunker, Marcus Boone received the battle data. He studied the readouts, then turned to his team. "Update the shield algorithms. They'll try again, and next time they'll bring more." He paused, then added, "And tell Captain Shaw it's time." Far out in the void, aboard the Aegis Dawn, Daniel Shaw read the message. He looked at Ryan Cole at the helm. "Set course for the Helios Drift," Shaw said. "Operation Torchlight begins now." Ryan grinned. About time. The fleet turned as one, engines humming to full power. They weren't running anymore. They were hunting. While the galaxy believed Earth had spent decades obeying, humanity had been learning, building, and waiting. Every insult, every unfair rule, Every life lost to conquered neglect, they remembered it all. Now they were done remembering. They were acting, and the galaxy would soon learn the difference between a servant and a force. The conquered was falling apart, and no one could stop it. Without Earth, the great machine of galactic order ground to a halt. Human engineers had maintained half the conquered's jump gates. Human doctors ran the best medbays in 3 sectors. Human pilots knew the safest routes through the Razor Nebula and the Dust Veil. Now all of that was gone. Ships drifted in dead zones. Hospitals ran out of medicine. Trade convoys got lost or ambushed. Panic spread faster than any virus. On the planet Qatar, the reptilian leaders blamed the mire, a hive-minded insect species, for helping Earth escape. They claimed the Mir had hidden human ships in their asteroid nests. Without proof, they launched raids on Mir outposts near the Helios Drift. The Mir fought back, not with words but with swarms of razor-winged drones that shredded Qatari patrol ships. War broke out in less than a week. The Voss, gas giant dwellers who lived in floating cities inside storm clouds, sealed their systems. Giant energy shields snapped into place around their homeworlds. No one in, no one out. They had traded with Earth for decades, exchanging rare gases for human-made fusion cores. Now they feared being dragged into the chaos. But the biggest shock came from the fringe colonies. On dozens of worlds far from the core, people with human blood, descendants of Earth's early space settlers, rose up. On Viridia 4, a mining planet run by Qatari overseers, workers tore down the conquered flag and raised an old Earth banner, a simple blue field with white stars. On Nova Haven, a farming world, human-descended families armed themselves with farming tools and old hunting rifles, then stormed the local conquered garrison. They weren't soldiers. They were farmers, teachers, mechanics. But they were tired of being treated like second-class citizens in their own homes, and they had a new hope. Earth was free. Far from the fighting, on a quiet salvage station near the Dead Star Xylos, a former conquered officer named Jake Morrow watched the news feeds with growing disbelief. Jake had once commanded a peacekeeping frigate. He'd believed in the conquered, really believed. But after he reported corruption in the supply chain, how food meant for refugee camps was being sold on the black market, he was stripped of rank and cast out. Now he scavenged broken ships for parts to survive. His current find was a derelict human freighter, half melted by plasma fire. He'd towed it into his hangar, hoping for salvageable circuits or fuel cells. Instead, he found something else. Deep in the ship's core, behind a false wall, was a data vault. It was locked, but Jake had spent years hacking conquered systems. This one was different, cleaner, smarter. It took him 2 days, but he cracked it. What he found changed everything. Logs, schematics, battle simulations, and recordings, hundreds of them, showing Earth's secret projects. Not just weapons, but entire fleets built in hidden yards, AI pilots trained in silent war games, shield tech that bent space itself. All of it developed while Earth smiled and nodded in conquered meetings. Jake sat back, stunned. Humanity hadn't been weak. They'd been hiding their strength. He played one final file. It was a speech never broadcast, recorded by a woman named President Nora Bell. Her voice was calm but firm. "We do not seek war," she said, "but we will not be slaves again. If the conquered falls because we leave, then it was never strong to begin with." Jake stared at the screen for a long time. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He made a choice. He copied all the data onto 3 hardened drives. One he kept. The other 2, he sent out on blind comms bursts, encrypted but marked with a simple tag, "Truth from Saul." Within hours, the files spread. On neutral trade hubs, smugglers played them in backroom bars. On academic worlds, professors showed them in secret lectures. Even some Concord loyalists watched and began to doubt. One of those who received the data was a Mire hive-mind node on the edge of the Outer Rim. Unlike most Mire, this one had long questioned the Concord's fairness. After reviewing Earth's files, it made a decision. It reached out, not to Earth but to human engineers who had once worked on mere terraforming projects. A new alliance began in silence. Back on Earth, Lisa Morgan and Marcus Boone studied the ripple effects. "Jake Morrow's leak is working," Lisa said, pointing to a map showing spikes in rebel activity. "The Qatari are losing control of 3 systems. The Mir are pulling back from conquered councils. Marcus nodded. Good, but it's not enough. They'll try to rebuild. They'll find a new leader, a new symbol. We need to make sure they never forget what happened when they pushed us too far. At the same time, Colonel Elena Ruiz was on Mars, overseeing the last phase of civilian relocation. The red planet was now a fortress. Hidden missile silos under Olympus Mons, drone nests in the Valles Marineris, and sensor webs buried in the dust. A young officer ran up to her. "Ma'am, we just got a signal from Titan. The Concord garrison there surrendered, they said. They said they didn't want to fight humans anymore." Elena raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" "They saw the Luna footage," the officer said. "They think we're unstoppable." Elena didn't smile. "We're not unstoppable. We're just ready." But the real test was coming. The Qatari, humiliated by their loss at Luna, were gathering a new fleet. Bigger. Angrier. They called it the Fist of Order. Their goal, strike Earth directly and end the rebellion before it spread further. What they didn't know was that Earth already knew. Deep space sensors, tiny, invisible, and scattered across the void, had tracked every ship movement. Captain Shaw's fleet was already shifting position, waiting in the dark between stars. And on Earth, in quiet towns and hidden bases, people prepared. Not with fear, but with focus. Farmers checked old rifles. Students studied star charts. Engineers tested new shield codes. They weren't just defending a planet. They were defending a choice, the choice to be free. Jake Morrow, now flying a patched-together scout ship, sent one last message to a neutral news net. It was short but clear. Earth didn't break the Concord. The Concord broke itself by thinking humans were less than they are. Then he turned his ship toward the Sol system. He didn't know if Earth would welcome him, but for the first time in years he believed in something, and that was enough. The Qatari didn't send a warning. They didn't ask for talks. They came with fire. Their new fleet, the Fist of Order, jumped into the Sol system near the moon Luna. 30 warships, each larger than anything Earth had ever built under Concord rules. Their hulls glowed with heavy armor, and their weapon ports pulsed with charged plasma. At their center floated the Dread Fang. The Qatari flagship, commanded by High Warlord Vrak believed this would be easy. Earth had no real navy, no true weapons, just old freighters and mining drones. He expected to land troops on Luna, seize control, and broadcast Earth's surrender within a day. He was wrong. The moment the Qatari fleet crossed the lunar defense line, the moon changed. Craters that had looked empty for centuries opened like eyes. Hidden turrets rose from the dust, their barrels humming with power. Beneath the surface, the lunar shield network came fully online. 10,000 drone units, quantum-linked sensors, and gravitic emitters that bent light and energy. The first Qatari ship exploded before it could fire a single shot. A beam of focused energy, invisible until it struck, punched through its core. The second ship tried to retreat, but a swarm of micro-drones latched onto its engines, frying its controls with electric pulses. It spun wildly, colliding with a third vessel. Chaos spread through the Qatari ranks. On the Dread Fang, Warlord Vrak roared orders. "Target the surface! Burn it clean!" But their weapons barely scratched the moon. Gravitic shields shimmered into place, absorbing plasma blasts and redirecting them into space. Missiles veered off course, confused by false signals from hidden jammers. From Earth, people watched the battle on public feeds. No one cheered. They just stood in silence, hearts pounding as their home defended itself. In the command bunker beneath Colorado, Colonel Elena Ruiz watched the data stream. "Lunar grid holding at 98%, she said. "Drone losses minimal." Marcus Boone stood beside her, arms crossed. "They're panicking. Good." Lisa Morgan entered the room, holding a datapad. "The Mir just cut all trade with the Qatari. And the Voss are broadcasting a message of neutrality, but they've opened a secure channel to us." Elena nodded. "The galaxy is watching. Let's give them a show they won't forget." Far above, aboard the Aegis Dawn, Captain Daniel Shaw watched the battle unfold on his main screen. His fleet waited in the dark just beyond Neptune's orbit. They hadn't moved yet. This was Earth's fight, and Earth was winning. But Shaw knew the Qatari wouldn't stop. If they failed here, they'd come back with more, or they'd strike somewhere softer. Mars, Titan, a colony world, he couldn't let that happen. "Ryan," Shaw said, turning to his pilot. "It's time. Ryan Cole grinned. About damn time. Shaw activated the fleet-wide channel. All ships, this is Shaw. Operation Torchlight is go. Target Helios Drift Command Nexus. Objective disable, not destroy. We end this war before it spreads. The human fleet moved as one. While the Qatari were busy at Luna, Earth's warships slipped through hidden jump points, routes never logged in conquered records. They used old mining paths, comet trails, and gravity shadows to stay unseen. Within hours, they were deep in Qatari-controlled space, near the Helios Drift, a cluster of space stations that served as the Qatari military's nerve center. The Qatari never saw them coming. Ryan Cole led the first strike group in his interceptor, the Stinger. It was small, fast, and nearly invisible to radar. Behind him flew 20 more pilots, all trained in silent running and precision strikes. Their target was the central AI core of the Helios Nexus, the brain that coordinated all Qatari fleet movements. Without it, the Fist of Order would be blind. Ryan's voice was calm over the comms. Stay low. Use the asteroid cover. They've got sensors, but they're looking outward, not inward. The human ships darted between rocks and ice chunks, engines running cool to avoid heat detection. They reached the outer ring of the station undetected. Then, all at once, they struck. Missiles launched, not explosive, but EMP pulse warheads designed to fry electronics without killing lives. Drone pods burst open, releasing swarms that crawled over the station's hull, seeking data ports and power lines. Inside the station, alarms blared. Qatari guards scrambled, but they were unprepared for an attack from within their own space. Ryan guided his ship through a maintenance tunnel, firing short bursts to clear the way. He reached the AI core chamber and planted a neural scrambler, a device Marcus Boone's team had built just for this. Scrambler armed, Ryan said. Detonating in 10, 9, 8. Back at Luna, Warlord Vrak suddenly lost all contact with his command network. His screens went dark. His fleet's formation broke apart as ships lost coordination. What is this? He snarled. Report. No one answered. The Fist of Order was blind. On Earth, cheers finally erupted, but only for a moment. People knew this wasn't victory. It was survival. Captain Shaw's voice came over the public channel, calm and clear. This is Captain Daniel Shaw of the Sol Defense Fleet. To the Qatari High Command, your aggression ends now. Leave our system. Respect our independence. Or next time, we won't be so gentle. The message played on every open frequency in the sector. The remaining Qatari ships at Luna powered down their weapons. Slowly, shamefully, they turned and fled. The battle was over, but the message was just beginning. Across the galaxy, rebel groups took hope. On Viridia 4, miners raised Earth's flag higher. On Nova Haven, families hugged in the streets. Even neutral worlds began to whisper. Maybe humanity wasn't the weak link after all. Maybe they were the spark. Jake Morrow, watching from his scout ship near the edge of Sol space, smiled for the first time in years. He keyed a message to Earth's open channel. Good work, Sol, he said. No, what's next? No one answered right away. But everyone knew. Earth wasn't just defending itself anymore. It was showing the galaxy what freedom looked like and how to fight for it. 1 year after the words independence confirmed lit up the Concord chamber, Earth was no longer just a planet. It was a promise. The old galactic Concord was gone. In its place, chaos had bloomed like a storm of fire and dust. But from that chaos, something new was growing. And at the center of it all stood Earth, not as a conqueror, but as a quiet force of order. On a clear morning in Geneva, workers finished building the Sol Concordance Center. It wasn't grand like the old chamber above Vera. It was simple. Glass walls, open courtyards, and meeting rooms with no raised dais, just circles of chairs, all equal. A sign at the entrance read, "All voices heard, all choices respected." Inside, President Nora Bell stood by a window watching the sunrise. She was in her 60s with silver hair and tired eyes, but her voice still carried the calm strength that had guided Earth through its hardest year. She wore no fancy robes, just a dark blue suit like any citizen. Behind her, Lisa Morgan entered with a data pad. The Voss delegation arrives tomorrow, she said. They've agreed to discuss trade, fusion cores for atmospheric stabilizers. Nora nodded. Good, and the Mir? They've sent a Hive node representative. They want to co-develop medical drones for refugee camps. That's even better, Nora said. We don't just trade metal and fuel. We trade hope. Outside, the world was healing. Farms that had been abandoned during the evacuation were green again. Schools taught not just math and history, but star navigation and shield theory. Children played games where they pretended to be pilots like Ryan Cole or engineers like Marcus Boone. But Earth hadn't forgotten how close they'd come to losing everything. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, Colonel Elena Ruiz trained a new generation of defenders. They weren't soldiers in the old sense. They were protectors trained to shield, to warn, to de-escalate. But if needed, to fight with precision and speed. Remember, Elena told a group of cadets during a simulation, our goal isn't to win wars. It's to make sure wars never start. On the edge of the system, Captain Shaw's fleet patrolled quietly. The Aegis Dawn now flew with ships from former colonies, Viridia 4's ragtag cruiser, Nova Haven's converted freighter, even a mere drone carrier that hummed with insectoid energy. They called themselves the Sol Watch, not an army, a shield. Back on Earth, Marcus Boone worked with Lisa Morgan to finish the last piece of their silent defense, the beacon network. It wasn't a weapon. It was a warning system. Thousands of tiny satellites scattered across known space, each watching for signs of aggression. If a fleet gathered near a peaceful world, the beacon would send an alert, not just to Earth, but to every system that had signed the new Sol Accord. Think of it like a neighborhood watch, Marcus explained to a group of young engineers. But for the whole galaxy, Lisa added. And if someone attacks, we don't jump in with guns. We send help, shields, medics, negotiators. Unless they hurt civilians, then we respond. The line was clear. Earth protected the innocent, always. Not everyone liked this new order. Scattered across the ruins of the old Concord, hardliners still clung to the past. They called themselves the Loyal Remnant, former officers, bureaucrats, and warlords who believed the galaxy needed a single ruler. And they saw Earth as the biggest threat to their dream. One of them was General Torin, a disgraced Qatari commander who had lost his ship at Luna. He now led a fleet of stolen vessels, raiding supply lines and spreading fear. His message was simple: Earth is weak. They pretend to be peaceful, but they'll crush you when you're not looking. He attacked a mere refugee convoy near the Dust Veil, killed dozens, blamed Earth, but Jake Morrow was watching. Now flying with the Sol Watch, Jake had become Earth's eyes in the dark. He'd tracked Torin for weeks, waiting for proof. When the attack happened, his scout ship recorded everything. He sent the footage to every open channel. The truth spread fast. The mere hive nodes issued a joint statement. Earth did not do this. The remnant lies. Even some Qatari clans turned against Torin. He shames our name, one elder said. Jake didn't stop there. He followed Torin's fleet to a hidden base in the Razor Nebula. Then he sent coordinates, not to Earth's war fleet, but to a joint task force of mere drones, Voss scouts, and human interceptors. They didn't destroy the base. They disabled its weapons, freed the prisoners, and left Torin stranded with a message carved into his hull: choose peace or be left behind. When Captain Shaw heard the report, he simply said, good, let the galaxy see we don't seek enemies, only justice. Back on Earth, President Nora Bell prepared for the first open summit at the Sol Concordance Center. Delegates from over 40 systems would attend, some curious, some cautious, a few still angry. But they were coming. That was the point. The night before the summit, Nora walked through the garden behind the center. She stopped by a small memorial, a wall of names, all the people who had died during the break from the Concord. Not just soldiers, farmers, doctors, children. She placed a single white flower at the base. We did this for you, she whispered. The next morning, as the first alien shuttles landed, Earth opened its doors. No guards with weapons. No scanners that invaded privacy. Just open gates and human guides who spoke softly and listened more than they talked. A young Mir delegate, her shell still soft from recent hatching, looked up at a human child playing nearby. The child waved. The Mir hesitated, then waved back. In that small moment, something shifted. The galaxy had spent centuries believing strength meant control. Earth was showing them that real strength meant trust. And trust, once given, could rebuild even the broken stars. The sun rose over Geneva, soft and golden as the first shuttles from other worlds touched down at the Sol Concordance Center. There were no fanfares, no marching bands, just quiet hums of engines and the gentle hiss of airlocks opening. Delegates stepped out onto Earth soil, some in full environmental suits, others in flowing robes or armored shells. They looked around, not with suspicion but with something new. Curiosity. Captain Daniel Shaw stood near the main entrance, not in uniform, but in a simple dark jacket. He wasn't here as a soldier today. He was here as a witness. A Voss envoy floated toward him, its gas-filled suit shimmering in the morning light. "You surprised us, Captain," it rumbled, voice like distant wind. "We thought you would build an empire." Shaw shook his head. "We just wanted to build a home and protect it." Inside the center, President Nora Bell greeted each guest with a handshake or a bow, depending on their custom. She didn't stand on a stage. She walked among them, listening more than she spoke. When a young Mir delegate asked how Earth kept its people safe without constant war, Nora smiled. "We teach them that peace is stronger than fear," she said, "and we back that up with action." The summit lasted 3 days. There were no grand treaties signed in blood or fire. Instead, there were agreements, small, practical, human. A promise to share clean water tech with desert worlds, a plan to rebuild medbays on war-torn colonies, a joint fleet of scouts, human, Mir, and Voss, to patrol refugee routes. It wasn't perfect. Some old wounds still ached. A Qatari elder refused to sit at the same table as a Mir. A former conquered bureaucrat muttered about chaos disguised as freedom. But no one walked out. Everyone stayed, and that was a start. On the final evening, as stars appeared in the sky, the delegates gathered in the central courtyard. Earth had prepared no speeches, no shows. Just food, simple dishes from every continent shared on long tables. A child played a flute. Another showed a Mir how to fold paper into a bird. It felt small, but it was everything. Far above, in orbit, the Aegis Dawn hung silent. On its bridge, Ryan Cole watched the feed from Geneva. "Feels strange," he said. "After all that fighting." "Peace is quiet," Shaw stood beside him. "Peace isn't quiet," he said. "It's just not loud with guns." Then a new signal flashed on the comms board. It was a distress call, not from a human colony, not from an ally, from a Mir settlement on the edge of the outer rim, Gelthar Nest. The message was broken, full of static, but the words were clear. Remnant forces attacking. Civilians trapped. No defense. The loyal remnant hadn't vanished. They'd been waiting. Shaw didn't hesitate. "All hands battle stations." Ryan, plot a jump to Gelthar. "But sir," Ryan said, "the summit is about protecting people." Shaw finished, not just talking about it. Within minutes, the Aegis Dawn powered up. It wasn't alone. A Voss scout ship and 2 Mir drone carriers docked nearby for the summit signaled they were coming too. Even Jake Morrow, parked in his old scout near the moon, sent a message. "I'm with you." No orders were given. No commands shouted. They simply moved, as one. At the summit below, Nora Bell received the alert on her wrist pad. She didn't panic. She turned to the gathered delegates. "A Mir nest is under attack," she said calmly. "Earth is responding." A Qatari delegate stepped forward. We will send our nearest patrol. They are close to Gelthar," a Voss envoy added. "We will open our emergency med lanes." One by one, species that had fought for centuries offered help, not because Earth asked, but because they finally understood what Earth stood for. In less than an hour, a rescue fleet formed, not under one flag, but many. At Gelthar Nest, the remnant forces were already inside the outer tunnels. They wore stolen Concord armor and carried old plasma rifles. Their leader, a bitter ex-officer named Drex, shouted as his men set charges on the nursery chambers. "Let them see what happens when you trust humans," he yelled. But before the charges could arm, the sky lit up. Human interceptors dropped from slipspace like falling stars. Mir drones poured from hidden vents, swarming the attackers. Voss energy nets wrapped around remnant ships, disabling them without a single explosion. Captain Shaw led the ground team himself. He didn't fire his weapon. He used a sonic pulse to stun, not kill. Within 20 minutes, the nest was secure. The civilians, mostly young Mir and caretakers, were safe. Drex was captured, hands bound. He glared at Shaw. "You think this makes you heroes?" You're just replacing one master with another. Shaw looked at him, not with anger, but pity. We don't want masters. We want neighbors. Back on Earth, the summit ended not with a speech, but with a shared meal under the stars. The news from Galthar spread fast. Not as a victory, but as proof. Humanity didn't seek to rule. They acted because it was right. In the weeks that followed, more worlds joined the Sol Accord. Not out of fear, out of trust. Lisa Morgan helped draft new communication protocols so no species would be left out. Marcus Boone shared shield schematics with engineers from 3 different worlds. Elena Ruiz trained mixed teams in defense tactics that protected, not punished. And Captain Shaw? He kept flying. Not to conquer, not to warn, but to be there when someone needed help. One evening, he stood on the observation deck of the Aegis Dawn, looking back at Earth. It was just a blue dot in the dark, small and fragile. But it burned bright. Ryan joined him. You ever think we'd get here? Shaw smiled. I hoped. They didn't speak for a while. Around them, the stars were quiet, but not empty. Not anymore. Somewhere out there, a child on a distant world looked up and saw a human ship pass overhead, not with weapons drawn, but with light steady and course true. And for the first time in a long time, the galaxy felt safe, not because someone ruled it, but because someone cared enough to protect it. And that, more than any weapon or war, was the true power of Earth.